Penguins win a couple in a row, and then they come back down a little bit with a 6-0 blowout loss to the Los Angeles Kings on Saturday. To start the show off, I'm going to go into what really set Sidney Crosby off and just how the goaltending really let the Penguins down on this one by Casey DeSmith letting in a couple of softies, Dustin Tokarski coming in cold and letting in a bad goal. All that plus so much more is coming up on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. You can visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. As you can see, I've done a couple of little things to my office. There's some stuff to the right side of here, some stuff to the left, and then right back behind me, for those that are on YouTube. Wonderful photo of the Steelers winning the Super Bowl in 2009, and then a very classic OG 2009 photo featuring Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Jordan Staal, and Marc-Andre Fleury from the 09 Cup final. I've had that photo for a good number of years. I'm glad I was able to fix it up a little bit, and tomorrow we're going to stack those with bookshelves. So this whole thing is really coming together nicely. But I can tell you what did not come together nicely was the Penguins game against the Los Angeles Kings on Saturday, a 11 o'clock face-off, because for some reason the LA Kings had to bring out the Stanley Cup for Dustin Brown, which is just ridiculous because this is a player who is not even going to sniff the Hockey Hall of Fame. I get it, did very well for them when he was there, brought them 2 Stanley Cups, but that whole ceremony was just felt kind of cringeworthy in some ways. That's like the Penguins doing, he's not the captain of this team. Obviously, he was never the captain of this team. But it's like the Penguins doing a ceremony for Chris Kunitz or something like that, and just doing it for like a 60 to 90 minutes. And that statue just looked really cringe. Faceoff starts 11, and the Penguins, they were ready to play. I thought they were forechecking well. Thought they were playing well defensively. They gave up a little bit of an early goal, kind of bad luck. But towards the late stages of that first period, they're trying to get some good chances, though they were kind of just put to the outside a little bit. But Casey DeSmith gives up a really bad goal after making a good save with only a couple minutes left. And, it just spiraled from there. They go down 3-0 because of another bad goal in the second period. Dustin Tokarski comes in. He gives up a little bit of a softie. Then at that point, it's 4-0. Game's over. So, that's how it goes. Phoenix Copley at one end made the saves in the first period. Casey DeSmith did not. And there was a lot of talk on Penguins Twitter about, should DeSmith be given that second consecutive start, right? And I thought going into it, I was fine with it. I didn't really mind it too much. I kind of saw both sides to it. Part of me was thinking DeSmith was going to go again because he didn't get a lot of work against the Ducks, and he also had turned in 2 quality starts in a row. But also another part of me, a smaller part, it was just like, this is a player who's never started back-to-back games. He's the backup for a reason. If you don't trust Dustin Tokarski to start in this game, why did you sign him in the first place? Why is he here? Also, he's here obviously because Tristan Jarry's hurt, but why just what's the point, basically, is what I'm saying. And, he had to come in anyway. He was ice cold, gave up a bad goal against, made a couple of, fine saves otherwise, but still his rebound control was lacking. The guy hadn't played in at least a couple of weeks. So, definitely was rusty. But again, you easily could have made the case, and I saw a lot of people doing it, that Tokarski should have started in that game against the Kings. He's the more fresh goalie. DeSmith banked you those points the next night. Maybe Mike Sullivan went into it late thinking, okay, I got to start DeSmith in the first game because we got to bank those 2 points. It doesn't really matter who starts in this game because we're just going to get killed just because the Penguins have only won 2 games on the second half of back-to-backs this season. So he probably just winged it, said, you know what, screw it, I'm going to start DeSmith again. And, sure, he paid the price for it because DeSmith, outside of that first goal, I didn't really like his game overall. The Kings were shooting 23%. So a lot of that was on goaltending, but I also will say this. Penguins, they did not play well after the first period. They punched the Kings in the mouth a little bit. They were forechecking hard. They were getting decent chances. The power play was getting some good chances. Phoenix Copley was making some good saves, but they weren't able to crack them. And then once they exerted all of that energy in that first period, the Kings had more of it because this was their first game in almost 2 weeks. They had to knock a little bit of rust off. Those fresh legs kick into high gear while the Penguins were just gassed after playing a game less than 24 hours later. Those are such tough back-to-backs, especially after you beat a bad team like the Ducks. You go to LA, a team that is very good this season, a team that hasn't played in almost 2 weeks. And I said this on my Twitter. This was kind of a scheduled loss, in my opinion. And I hate using that term because people will say, like, well, that's just excuses and stuff. But sometimes games are scheduled losses. Look at the Washington Capitals. They went up to Boston, gave the Bruins their second home regulation loss of the season, something around those numbers. They had a really nice game against them. Come home less than 24 hours later, you're playing a bad Sharks team. Though they didn't even show up. They lost 4-1 at home. They looked like they were just going through the motions, wanting to get home to watch the Super Bowl with their teammates or their friends and family. So, those kind of games happen to every team out there. It's just a shame that it happened after such a really good win against Ducks. Again, goaltending is partly to blame. I don't think Casey DeSmith and Tristan Tokarski did a good enough job. I also did not think the Penguins did a good enough job, just getting to the high danger areas of the ice. They were being outchanced in those areas 13-5 about halfway through the second period. It ended up being a bit worse if I have the number right here. Yeah, 16-7 overall in terms of that for the Kings. The Penguins had the better of their shot attempts. Scoring chances were close to 50-50, but the Kings also had 63% of the expected goals. So in terms of the expected goals and high danger chances, the Kings were a lot better there, and rightfully so. But, again, I said coming into this, guys, 4 out of 6 points. That's what I'm looking for on the California road trip. That was my minimum. Beat the Ducks, check. Kings, you could have gotten it. Okay, you lost, you move on. You're still in a good spot in the wild card. Got the Sharks. You got the Sharks on Tuesday. Got to win that game. I'm sorry. I understand the Sharks have been playing better as of late. Tampa Bay, they beat them down there. They just took Carolina to overtime before they beat the Penguins. They beat the Capitals down in D.C. They are giving a lot of good teams fits. And so it's definitely not a gimme game. But it's still one where I feel like you have to get the 2 points there in that situation before you go back to play the Islanders, 2 out of your next 3 games, and of course the Devils as well. So that sums up part of my thoughts on that. The Sidney Crosby thing, let's just jump into that real quick. It is very hard, I think, at this point in his career to really piss him off. There's a reason why he's never received a game misconduct. He never just mouths off to the officiating. Doesn't really get into it anymore. You can say that he did early on in his career because he did. He was a whiner when he was 18 to 20 to 21 years old. But what person that age was not still whining? The guy's 35 years old now. And he got the misconduct. Garrett Rank is a garbage official who should probably not be working many other games this season. I think he stinks. I know he was the ref that gave the Penguins 9 power plays against the Devils, but he was also the ref that just kept that entire game of special teams. And then this one was calling really ticky-tacky stuff, missing a lot of other things that were more blatant penalties. He is an absolute garbage official. Just awful. So when I saw Sid got the game misconduct, I turned it off at that point just because there's just no point in looking at it. So I turned it back on, and I was seeing the replay, and I'm like, what exactly did he do to get thrown out? I mean, he mouthed off to the official a little bit, but, basically, Sid basically got cross-checked right in front. Oh, actually, no, that was not Sid. I believe that was Rickard Rakell. I believe so. Yeah, it was. He got cross-checked right in front by Mikey Anderson. And actually, no, I believe, no, so I apologize. That was Sid that got cross-checked. Then Rickard Rakell kind of just standing there, not really going to the defense of his captain. I'm not really super big on that. I understand other people are. But Sid hasn't, he has a right to be upset about that. It's a blatant penalty that they, it's just a joke that it should have given the Penguins just a big power play in that instance. But Sid had to mouth back to the ref, and he ends up getting tossed. And yeah, I mean, you see what happened there. Mike Sullivan is I don't know if he was calling Garrett Rank this or Todd McClellan, the LA Kings head coach, but let's just say he called him a D-bag. For those that are not familiar with that term, you can Google it yourself. I'm not going to say that word on the podcast here. He also dropped a giant F-bomb before saying F you to McClellan, or it was Garrett Rank. He was not happy with that. And Sid, he didn't want to get fined after the game. He said, can I really say what I really think at this point? So he was unhappy about it. People are going to sit here and call him a crybaby and call him a whiner, blah, 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 blah. Do not even listen to those people. It is total garbage. 2007 is calling you back with the flip phones and the razors and all that. He's not a whiner anymore. I don't really need to give that any of my attention. But still, very weird situation. I don't know why he got a misconduct. There was no reason to give him a misconduct there. He was just, standing up, to the ref for what happened with Anderson. He was not happy with Anderson. Also, he went up to him and exchanged a couple pushed and shoved him a little bit. And, his frustrations are definitely starting to show a little bit more as of late, just because I think the team's been pretty inconsistent. He takes the playoffs very seriously and this streak. He wants to continue it. He wants this team to start playing more consistent hockey. So I understand why he is pretty fed up right now. So those are my thoughts on the situation, why goaltending, just I think, towards the end of the first period and into the early second period, the stages of the second period, why that I think just really screwed the Penguins in this game. Coming up in the second segment, though, we are going to get into some practice notes and why finally, it looks like Tristan Jarry will be making his long-awaited return on Tuesday against the San Jose Sharks. But before we get to that, our next partner has a product I use literally every day. I started taking Athletic Greens because, I didn't have time in the morning to work out and do stuff. I wanted more energy when I would wake up as well. I'm not really big on taking pills and vitamins in the morning. I also wanted something that tastes good. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, and probiotics to help you start your day right. This special blending ingredient supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things. It's also lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It also supports better sleep quality and recovery. It supports mental clarity and alertness. It also costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens also has over 7,000 5-star reviews, and it's also recommended by professional athletes. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day, and that's it. There's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. That is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, I'm back in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So, Penguins practice today in Los Angeles before flying to San Jose. I believe that's only like an hour or two flight up there to San Jose, Santa Clara area where the 49ers play as well. And the Penguins got good news today on the injury front. Tristan Jarry making his way back. It sounds like, according to Josh Yohe, who was there, he said it looks perfectly fine, was taking the majority of the reps. That was confirmed by Danny Shirey, who was at practice. He said he was staying in one net while DeSmith and Tokarski were rotating in and out of the other. All signs point to the Penguins' number one goaltender returning on Tuesday against the Sharks. That is massive. Getting him back, hopefully having him stay healthy, is so huge for the success of this team. He needs to stay healthy for the rest of the season. They cannot rely on DeSmith and Tokarski, to get them into the playoffs and then win them around. We all saw what happened in the rain against the Rangers this last spring. So getting him back is massive. I'll have more on an update on him a little later on in the show with an interesting article from Frank Sarabelli with some trade targets that he has there, and a little report about Jarry about what could be causing these latest injuries. That's coming up in the final segment, so a little bit tease for you there. But Jan Rutta was also there. He is not going to play tomorrow, even though he's got another full practice. I'm going to tell you why. So, Jarry can be activated anytime. All the Penguins need to do is send someone down because it's regular injured reserve. The cap does not matter with that. So, with him, Tokarski will be sent down, assuming Jarry is good to go for tomorrow, which I think he will be. That will be the move. Now, if Jan Rutta was going to return tomorrow, the Penguins would have had to send both Tokarski down and probably someone like Drew O'Connor and put someone else on waivers because he's coming off long-term injured reserve. So the Penguins, they with the Tokarski move, they'll have full 23-man roster. With Jan Rutta coming back, it'll be down to 22, so they'll have an extra roster spot. But because Rutta's on long-term injured reserve, they have to send someone. They have to put someone on waivers. It was looking like today it was going to be Mark Friedman, but right now he's day-to-day with an upper body injury. I do not have an update. I do not know where that injury really occurred. He finished the game on Saturday against the Kings, so I'm not really sure again with that. But, he could still be put on waivers and be sent down to Wilkes-Barre. But they also could opt to maybe put Dan Heinen on waivers and have him be sent down as well. So in order to activate Jan Rutta after Tristan is good to go, potentially for tomorrow, the Penguins will have to send at least one player down to Wilkes-Barre and then put another one from the active roster on waivers. That's how that works. I did not know that coming in today. Shout out Taylor Haas for explaining that on her Twitter. She is so great with cap friendly and all that stuff. I feel like I'm very smart in a lot of things, especially when it comes to the sport. When it comes to part of the cap and cap friendly and stuff, I'm not a newbie, but I'm definitely not an expert like she is. So I'm really glad that she was able to point that out, and I can tell you all about it on the show. She is excellent with that stuff. It makes me smarter with it. That's for sure. Because again, I'm not close to an expert with that on probably a lot of things as well. But that's why Jan Rutta is not going to be playing tomorrow. Earliest he'll probably come back is Friday or Saturday against the Islanders or the Devils. Lines were the same today. Gensel, Crosby, Rakell, Zucker, Malkin, Russ, McGinn, Carter, Kapanen, Paling, Bluger, Archibald, Dumoulin, Letang, Pettersson, Petrie, but P.O. Joseph with Chad Ruedel. Mark Friedman obviously took Ruedel's place in the last game. I thought that was the right call because Friedman had a really good game against the Ducks. Ruedel has struggled a little bit at times this year, but there's not really, I guess, too much of a difference between the two. But it looks like Ruedel will be in the lineup for that game against the Sharks. And then power play units remain unchanged as well. Crosby, Gensel, Rakell, Malkin, Letang, Carter, Russ, Zucker, Kapanen, and Petrie for power play 2. And again, because Mark Friedman was not waived today, he's hurt. So day-to-day with an upper body injury was not a maintenance day. Sometimes Mike Sullivan likes to say that, but no, not a maintenance day for him. He is banged up. So, a soul for a soul. Tristan Jarry will be coming back. Mark Friedman gets hurt. And then, Jan Rutta will be activated here pretty soon. It's good that Friedman is usually an extra, but we're just about there for having the full team healthy, knock on wood, at least. And that's really all I have in terms of practice updates for you all. I will say this: we can end the show with this little nugget from Frank Saravalli. We're going to get into the rest of it in the second segment here. The final segment, excuse me. So Frank writes, the Penguins back end has been a mash unit with the injury suffered, but more concerning than that is the status of Tristan Jarry, who has missed 13 of the Penguins' last 15 games with upper and lower body injuries. Here's the kicker. Those injuries are believed to be related to a chronic hip issue that has had a compounding effect on other injuries as he attempts to compensate it. He's also a UFA. When healthy, he's been outstanding with a .921 save percentage, but reliability and dependability are two of the biggest abilities when it comes to that position. Okay, that is the first time I have ever heard about a chronic hip issue with this goalie. I heard that he's had a nagging groin issue at times. I think that was what happened with the first injury. I don't know what the second injury was, but it would make sense, in a way, especially if it was a hip, because the groin, it just it affects different things in the body. But, it would also, would that explain the foot injury that he suffered against the Islanders? I'm not really sure about that one, just because that was a freak accident when Anders Lee just barreled right into it and broke his foot. I think this has to do more with these latest two injuries, the first one being the groin, I think, what I heard. And then the second one, I don't know. But, that's scary if he has a chronic hip issue that is forcing him to miss a lot of these games. It's also just forcing a couple of injuries on his hand. I actually had One of my followers reach out to me and say, the Josh Banks, who is great from Penguins Twitter, and he even says, as a goalie who has actually had 4 hip surgeries, I know all about this condition. You can play through it, but you have to stay super stretched out. But if he's got impingement, any random move can be bone on bone, and that hurts like just, excuse my language there, because I wonder if he's getting cortisone shots. So that makes it sound like, again, I never had any hip injury in my life. I know, people have had hip injuries of their own. That makes it sound like it is really painful to play through. And, it sounds like maybe the slightest of movements might be causing this. So, I wouldn't be surprised every game. I'm not a medical expert here. I've never claimed to be. Is he getting a shot before every game to really just play through this and make sure that this is not causing other injuries? I mean, Mike Sullivan keeps saying like, oh yeah, he's making progress. I mean, people are saying during practice that he looks good. He's making the right saves. His movement looks good. But again, is another situation going to flare up with him where he just gets hurt in another week or two or something because his chronic hip issue flared up and it caused another injury in his body? That's what I'm really afraid of, based off that report from Frank Saravelli. And, that also goes into what happens with him after the season ends. Do the Penguins feel that he is the right guy to lead them for the next several seasons as the franchise goaltender? Because again, the market for the goalies this summer, not good. Frederik Andersen's out there, but he has injury concerns of his own. Outside of that, there's not a lot of good starters out there. So, if that report from Saravelli is true, they're going to have a big decision to make when it comes to that. That's not good news if he has a chronic hip issue, because that those are really tough injuries for goalies. So I'm going to end the second segment on that. Coming up in the final segment, we're going to dive more into Saravelli's article and some potential trade options that he has listed for the Penguins. I'm going to go over some of them that I have not gone over myself, and if that makes sense, and a look at some of the assets of the Penguins, give up at what he has as well. But before we get into that, we have to touch on FanDuel. FanDuel, of course, which is the official sportsbooks partner of Locked On. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Again, that's bonus bets if your first bet does not win. Just download the app right now. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. So I don't follow the NBA too much anymore. I used to, just back when I'm a little bit kid. So I don't really have the best bets right now for you all. But, if I had to make one for one of the games, I would say coming up, I would, the Wizards, who have just been horrendous this season, I would pick them to lose against who they're going up against. I think that's an easy money line slam dunk right there. Again, I don't follow the NBA as much as I used to, but I'm hopefully going to get more into it. I feel like if the Lakers had LeBron James back right now, I would put a little bit of a money line on them, despite them not being that good right now. But they also just did make a couple of really big trades that I'm hoping will get them back to the playoffs. They used to be my childhood team, and I'm hoping that they're able to get back, because LeBron just broke the scoring record last week. So congratulations to him. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. You can go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, I'm back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, follow the show's Twitter at @NorthShore Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So let's get into the rest of Saravelli's article here. So just goes into stuff like, how do we get here? Deadline posture should be buyers. Yes. He thinks the top objective should be a second line scoring winger. He does say the Penguins have to find a way to increase the productivity outside of Crosby, Malkin, and Gensel. Yeah, Frank, but Jason Zucker has been, I think, one of their best wingers. Brian Russ is starting to heat up. I don't know if they fully need a second-line scoring winger as their top need. I don't know how you can say that when Jeff Carter is eating third-line minutes for you every night and you don't have a good third-line center. I understand the need for it, but the top six is also loaded right now. I think anything more to the top six would just be a bonus. And then the second objective he thinks is a defenseman. He goes, at pure sense of the position, but not merely a defenseman, the injuries to Letang and Petrie should the Penguins thinking about a way to beef up the blue line. Okay, again, I don't think they should be in the market for a defenseman. Unless you're getting rid of Brian Dumoulin or something like that. But right now, they seem pretty set. Dumoulin, Letang, Pettersson, Petrie, P.O. Joseph, Jan Rutta, Chad Riedl's your extra. I don't think they're going to go out there and get another defenseman. I mean, as I'm going to get to in just a second, there's a couple options that he lists, but third line center, third line winger, you can even make an argument for second line winger. Those are fine, but I just don't see a need for a defenseman unless you're going out and getting Jacob Chikrin. It doesn't look like the Penguins are even in on that right now. After that, he does have potential targets. He lists Timo Meier. I've talked about him exclusively on my show last week. They can definitely make that work, especially when it comes to, all their picks. They can send back some cash in that deal. They can hopefully get the Sharks to retain a little bit. Yeah, I know he's due a massive qualifying offer. As Frank notes, it's $10 million, but he could be signed long-term because, again, he's a RFA after the summer. The Penguins are going to have cap space. He makes them better. Sure, he's been linked to Carolina and New Jersey, but why not the Penguins? Why can't they step in and try to go get Meier? That's a great That's a great way for them to go all in. He also lists Brock Besser. I know he's at an increased role. He's not a bad player. He'll be less expensive. You can probably get him first in a prospect, first on a roster player, something like that. Maybe even a second in a roster player. I don't know how far his value has fallen or risen. But again, he's also due a massive qualifying offer, I think, next season. And he's fine, but I probably wouldn't have him on my top 5 list of targets. That's just my opinion, though. He does list Tyler Bertuzzi. That is a very Ron Hextall, Brian Burke player, a player that can put the puck in the back of the net very well, a player that is a good playmaker, a player that is a good defender. His contract can be affordable if the Wings were willing to take back some money. Also willing to retain some money. You could put him on the third line. He would make a lot of sense. Seeing Tyler Bertuzzi maybe next to Kasperi Kapanen, if he's not in the deal, seeing him next to, maybe he can help amplify Jeff Carter up a little bit if they want to somehow have him be the third line center, which would be insane. Bertuzzi does make a lot of sense, especially if Steve Yzerman wants to part with him as the deadline nears, because the Red Wings are not going to be making the playoffs this year. This team is too far out of the race at this point. The math is not good. They're getting a bit closer, but, Bertuzzi does make sense when it comes to me. Then he lists the other two. Jake McCabe from the Chicago Blackhawks. He's probably going to go for a good, he's going to get at least a first or prospect and maybe a roster player. I'm not giving that up for a second or third pair defender. Luke Shen, I understand that he played in Philadelphia under Ron Hextall was there. Sure, he would be low cost, but again, they don't need a defenseman in my eyes, Jens. They don't. I would put third line center as my top need. I would put, a scoring winger for the second or third line is my second need, and then maybe a backup goaltender if you're not confident Casey DeSmith. Then I would put a defenseman. I just don't see it as one of their top 3 things they need, especially when this D-core is healthy. Chris Letang hopefully can stay healthy for the rest of the year. Jeff Petrie just came back. Jan Rutta is coming back in the next week or so. Pettersson's been having a good year. P.O. Joseph has really blossomed. He's been great lately. They don't need another defenseman right now. We all saw what happened when they signed Jan Rutta over the offseason, deal that, you're looking at it right now. Do they really need that money on their cap? $2.75 million for 3 years when you easily could have just replaced him with Chad Riedel or Mark Friedman? I mean, fine player, don't get me wrong. I don't think he's been a detriment to the team this season, but could have allocated that cap to potential other scoring winger like Evan Rodriguez. Had to do it because, again, that deal this summer was just weird. I don't really know. I mean, I was kind of fine with that time, but then, the more you think about it and the more you see some of the defensemen of how they play this year, and Rutta's been out, like Chad Riedel, Mark Friedman, P.O. Joseph has been in the lineup all year. Ty Smith's been in it. Did they really need to go out there and sign him during free agency when they could have signed another forward to make their bottom 6 better? No. Definitely a weird one, to say the least. And then he lists their trade chips, full complement of picks. Obviously, the Penguins have their first and second for each of the next few seasons. He does list Kasperi Kapanen with $3.2 million for 1 more year. He also lists Teddy Blueger. He does say, problem at the end, problem is many think Blueger is a guy who will help you win in the playoffs. Okay, well, how the Penguins are playing, with how he's playing this season, I don't think he's going to help any team win the playoffs. Maybe the Penguins can sell someone on that. He also does list Owen Pickering, but I don't think he's going to be on the table for any trade. And then he does list goaltending prospect Joel Blomqvist because they did trade Calle Klang last year. He said he's 21, he's put up solid numbers, and they finished lately. They have other goalie prospects, but Blomqvist is the best, and he could fetch a nice return in the league. Sorry for goaltenders. Yeah, I would not be surprised if he's included in the deal just because they took a goalie in this past year's draft, and he looks like he's on a better career trajectory than Blomqvist at this point. That's really all Saravelli has in this article. Again, my top objective is a third line center. My secondary objective is maybe a second or third line winger, then a goaltender, and then a defenseman. I look at the rumors where they say the Penguins are in on a defenseman. I saw that with Dmitry Kulikov, and now Saravelli's putting in potential targets with Luke Shannon and Jake McKay. I just laugh. I just don't see it. I could very well get old takes exposed with that. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't see it. I just disagree that they could use another defenseman at this point, especially when they're paying their defenseman a lot of money right now. But these next 18 days should be fun. About 2.5 weeks away from the deadline. We'll have to see if things start to heat up in Penguin land. They got a lot of big games coming up to really see at this point. Can the Penguins do enough so Hextall wants to reward them? With a trade. Heck, it shouldn't be about that. He should probably just make a trade because they need the help overall. But again, that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up for tomorrow's episode, since the game is so late, 10:30 start time on Tuesday. Yes, I understand. You cannot make it through a full game on a Tuesday night at 10:30 when you have work early the next day. You are fine in my book. That is late. I'm obviously gonna do it because I don't have work the next day until 11. But I understand if people want to go to bed before 11:30 midnight on a Tuesday night with work the next day. But Penguins Sharks on Tuesday should be a fun game. I'll have a full preview episode coming out during the day for that one. The Penguins try to get their revenge after losing to the Sharks 6-4, and was probably their low point of the season just before the All-Star break. So again, thank you all so much for listening. Really appreciate it. I'll be back with another episode for you all on Tuesday. Also preview Penn Sharks before recapping that one on Wednesday. Talk to you all on Tuesday.